So, do you have any opening thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I mean, overall, like all the news the past week, this morning even, my anxiety has been through the roof, and I have never felt this terrified for the future of this country, ever. And I've been following politics for 10 years. It's really just, it's unspeakable. I think, I mean, especially if Biden loses.
Yeah,
It's like you were all warned. You
yeah,
were warned. You were warned. You were warned multiple times for many years, especially the months leading up to the election, and you didn't listen, and now we're facing the consequences. And honestly, if Biden loses, it's fucking over.
yeah,
America is done. I don't know how much you read about the Supreme Court decision, but I guess we can
yeah.
segue
Let's
right
get
into that.
we can get into that. Yeah, and then we'll finish up with a third. It will circle back to this for. We'll talk about the DNC convention in
Yeah,
Chicago. Go ahead.
yeah, that seems like a good thing to end up on. But this, the Supreme Court basically ruled that the president's immune from anything as long as it's an official act. Would not specify what is or isn't an official act, and so it got knocked back down to a lower court. But because they did this, any president has free reign to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah,
And it's not even the fact that like
as long as there are official actions as opposed to unofficial actions
that
in the
is
language, right?
yes, correct. And they made it so that it could just be tied up in courts forever. Like say if you did something as president that could be considered like illegal, like definitely beyond the bounds of what any normal like actual civilian would do, that would then get taken to the courts. But you'd be able to make the argument like, oh, I was just acting within my official duties as president, and then it just get locked up in the courts forever. Like technically, yeah, you can be held accountable, but how long is it going to take? Because you'd have to determine what is or isn't an official act, and the ruling stated specifically that determining official acts and unofficial acts, say like if you ordered the assassination of someone and it was an unofficial act, you can't use evidence from official acts like conspiring with your cabinet or military brass or whatever. You can't use any of that as evidence to say that this unofficial act was, illegal.
Illegal.
Yeah. So it's literally full blown fucking
So basically,
immunity.
Nixon would have been able to get away
Yes,
with Watergate.
I've already seen multiple memes about that. Like, oh, Nixon in hell, like celebrating
Right.
his. Oh
Like what
my.
the fuck?
Yeah, literally.
So Nixon would have been. That's the way to explain that issue to
Yes.
people is that Nixon would have been able to get away with what he did.
Yes. Not only that, like, the presidency has just been given
So much power.
an insane amount of power.
Yeah, the White
It,
House has become a lot more powerful since 9/11, thanks to W, and it got even more powerful under Trump.
it is the
I think it
most.
might have even become more powerful under Obama. I'm not sure.
It ha, there
Drone
has never
strikes. I
been.
mean, Obama's drone. I think Obama used Bush's laws to do the drone strikes.
Right, more drone
I'm
strikes than
pretty
the other
sure.
president, I believe. So basically, now the presidency is a monarch. Like the president's a monarch.
Right.
You're effectively a king, and you can do whatever you want, as long as it's an official act as president. If if the pres it's so frustrating because Biden actually came out in response to this decision, and it was just toothless. It was nothing. Oh, it was like, oh, we believe that like nobody's above the law and this and that, when it should have came out just like in a reign of fury.
Yeah.
Because like of course, this was like a 6-3 ruling, so that like there, like it was along ideological lines. It it's literally it's literally a rogue court. If any president can be immune from prosecution for official acts that violate the law, they aren't a president. They're a fucking tyrant. And the future of America, for me, like, has just never been so bleak because of this. Like, in the last 10 days alone, the Supreme Court has ruled that a president can do any crime at once they want. Bribery is legal. Agencies that have no actual like they took away jurisdiction of federal agencies. The Chevron doctrine that was taken away. That was abolished. That doesn't matter anymore. Meaning that federal agencies, the OSHA, if that's the agency, EPA, Department of Education, FBI, CIA, all of them, no longer have any power, basically, because all of their decisions have to be relegated to the court. Like, the court basically has the final say. If they pass regulations and someone comes along, like a corporation or whatever, says, "Oh, we don't agree with this. Let's take this to the courts." This is then, like, it's just a domino effect at that point, because the court has the final say. But what do the courts know? Neil Gorsuch, literally, in one of the cases, was arguing against something to do with the EPA, and continuously confused nitrous oxide with nitrogen oxide. He thought laughing gas was smog. He didn't know what they were fucking talking about. Like, and you want to relinquish the control?
The shine of the robes of our judges in our society has been smeared. The robes don't mean shit anymore. There are human beings under those robes, very flawed human beings, very biased human beings, very politicized human beings, and they are not as intelligent as you might think they are. Literally. They are not as worldly as you might think they are, and they are definitely powerless against the effects of age, which pretty much always makes someone more conservative. That's why the premise of lifetime appointments in our court system makes absolutely no sense, especially at the Supreme Court level.
Yeah.
Give them 18 years, give them 16 years, I don't care.
Yeah, like Ro Khanna introduced something like establish a code of ethics and give justices an 18-year term. That's something. Start somewhere. Before
let them write a book once they get out, so that they can retire off of the royalties. I mean, they can write a book, but they have to wait until they get out of the court.
Trump's lawyers literally argued that, the president can order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate his political rivals, and he would have immunity. That'd be within his official duties, his official capacities as president. And the Supreme Court just ruled that he can do that. Like, he would be immune from a prosecution.
Yeah, it's going to be scary. It's going to be Handmaid's Tale, man.
It's terrifying, and so people were asking, like, oh, well, if they just ruled this, Biden has this power right now. What's stopping him from, like, arresting Trump or abolishing the Supreme Court? And this is what's really scary. It doesn't matter. It actually does matter who's president, because if there's a president in office who's ideologically aligned with the Supreme Court, if there are cases against them that reach the Supreme Court, they will more than likely rule in their favor. But if it's someone who's more left-leaning, like Biden, I guess, chances are their extrajudicial official acts that they're, apparently immune from, like, prosecution from, according to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court might just rule that they're not immune, just because their ideologies differ.
Right.
It's
That's political judges.
Literally, it's
Political judges.
legislating
It's
for
not
the
more
bench.
complicated than that.
It's like everything goes back to them. Like three co-equal branches of the government that no longer fucking exists.
No.
Today changed everything. Today changed everything. America is no longer the same place. And this cannot possibly be overstated. I have been in just, I wouldn't say hysterics, but just like being able to like focus on anything else other than what just happened. It is anxiety inducing to the fullest extent, because like this shit means a lot to me. I follow politics. I'm already jaded enough as it is, but seeing this and knowing that it is my fucking future is horrifying in its reality. Like it's not a fucking dream. Violent authoritarianism is legally permitted 4 months before before the openly aspiring authoritarian is poised to go against a guy who isn't even all there. You know?
Yeah.
It's like the fact that our only hope rests with not only Biden winning, but Congress acting to curb the power of these rulings. Like, the future's bleak. Like, if that's where our hope lies, it's like I I might as well start looking at like other countries to flee to. Like, it's not a pretty picture right now. It's a destruction of the administrative state, and this is literally outlined.
Well,
in
people
Project
talk. It's funny
2025.
because normie neoliberals think that the Democratic Party kind of has our back with respect to maintaining the basic structure of things. So everything that you just said about how this changes the structural protections of the president basically being able to do whatever he wants, that limitation is now all but removed. I mean, he can order the assassination of foreign dictators if he wants.
Yeah.
And receive no consequences.
Yeah, not to mention full control over federal agencies that he hasn't yet abolished, I guess you could say. It's literally the introduction of a new deep state. This is literally like the beginning of Project 2025.
And then we know what's next is going to be a lifetime appointment for presidency.
Yep.
That's going to be the next one.
What's stopping him? Literally. I mean, the only, I guess, silver lining in that regard is like who's next after Trump. The Republicans are already in disarray as it is, so but like still, like after that, once it gets to that point, the damage is fucking done. Like, what's the point of elections anymore? We'll just appoint people or like hold sham elections. It's just endlessly fucking frustrating, and like, especially since like Biden's response to the whole Supreme Court thing was like, "Oh, I know they just gave me a lot of power, but I refuse to use it because I'm above this. No president's above the law and whatnot." I want to read the dissenting statement from Sonia Sotomayor of the Supreme Court in response to the Supreme Court ruling. Looking beyond the fate of this particular prosecution, the long-term consequences of today's decision are stark. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. This new official acts immunity now, quote, lies about like a loaded weapon, unquote, for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gains above the interests of the nation. Korimatsu versus United States is another a case that she's referencing there. The president of the United States is the most powerful person in the country, and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way, under the majority's reasoning, he now will be insulated from criminal prosecution. When he uses his official powers in any way, this next part is what really got me. Orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power, immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon, immune. Immune, immune, immune. Let the president violate the law. Let him exploit the trappings of his office for political gain. Let him use his official power for evil ends. Because if he knew that he may one day face liability for breaking the law, he might not be as bold and fearless as we would like him to be. That is the majority's message today. Even if these nightmare scenarios never play out, and I pray they never do, the damage has been done. The relationship between the president and the people he serves has shifted irrevocably. In every use of irrevocably, that's right. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. This cannot be overstated. This is not hyperbole whatsoever. This statement is not scary enough. The downstream effects from this decision are going to be fucking huge. And to those celebrating it, like, if there's literally anybody at all, understand that Biden has these powers right now. And speaking of which, I think we should watch his reaction to it. He put out a statement that was only like 2 minutes long. I don't know if you want to like look that up and pull it up. I'm sure there's like something like, or maybe like C-SPAN or something like that. But I think we should watch that. I think our audience should see exactly just how much hope there is, and how the Biden administration is handling this unfathomably world-changing decision. It's the death of America.
We are getting our first reaction from the Biden campaign, Craig, and it gives you a sense of their thinking and their strategy moving forward. Let me read you a part of what they say. Quote, today's ruling doesn't change the facts, so let's be very clear about what happened on January 6th.
The presidency is the most powerful office in the world. It's an office that not only tests your judgment, perhaps even more importantly, it's an office that can test your character. Because you not only face moments when you need the courage to exercise the full power of the presidency, you also face moments where you need the wisdom to respect the limits of the power of the office of the presidency. This nation was founded on the principle that there are no kings in America. Each of us is equal before the law. No one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. With today's Supreme Court decision on presidential immunity, that fundamentally changed. For all practical purposes, today's decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what a president can do. This is a fundamentally new principle, and it's a dangerous precedent, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone. This decision today has continued the court's attack in recent years on a wide range of long-established legal principles in our nation, from gutting voting rights and civil rights, to taking away a woman's right to choose, to today's decision that undermines the rule of law of this nation. Nearly 4 years ago, my predecessor sent a violent mob to the U.S. Capitol to stop the peaceful transfer of power. We all saw it with our own eyes. We sat there and watched it happen that day. Attack on the police, the ransacking at the Capitol, a mob literally hunting down the House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, gallows erected to hang the Vice President, Mike Pence, I think it's fair to say it was one of the darkest days in the history of America. Now the man who sent that mob to the U.S. Capitol is facing potential criminal conviction for what happened that day. And the American people deserve to have an answer in the courts before the upcoming election. The public has a right to know the answer about what happened on January 6th before they are asked to vote again this year. Now, because of today's decision, that is highly, highly unlikely. It's a terrible disservice to the people of this nation. So now the American people will have to do what the courts should have been willing to do, but will not. The American people have to render a judgment about Donald Trump's behavior. The American people must decide whether Donald Trump's assault on our democracy on January 6th makes him unfit for public office in the highest office in the land. The American people must decide if Trump's embrace of violence to preserve his power is acceptable. Perhaps most importantly, the American people must decide if they want to entrust the president once again, the presidency, to Donald Trump, now knowing he'll be even more emboldened to do whatever he pleases whenever he wants to do it. You know, at the outset of our nation, it was the character of George Washington, our first president, to define the presidency. He believed power was limited, not absolute. And that power always resides with the people, always. Now, over 200 years later, with today's Supreme Court decision, once again, it will depend on the character of the men and women who hold that presidency that are going to define the limits of the power of the presidency, because the law will no longer do it. I know I will respect the limits of the presidential powers I have for 3.5 years, but any president, including Donald Trump, will now be free to ignore the law. I concur with Justice Sotomayor's dissent today. Here's what she said. She said, in every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. With fear for our democracy, I dissent. End of quote. So should the American people dissent. I dissent.
How do they do this?
May God bless you all, and may God help preserve our democracy. Thank you. And may God protect our troops.
Scary.
Yeah, no, unbelievably weak. He should have came out and announced the abolition of the Supreme Court, his resignation, and the endorsement of literally any big-name Democrat. Like, how can he sit there and...
Is there any way he can override the Supreme Court on this before the election?
I mean, if... I don't know.
Both houses of Congress. If you got both houses of Congress, you could do it. There's no way he's going to get both houses of Congress to do this.
Right. No kidding. I mean, it's not like he can sign an executive order saying, "Oh, the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court no longer matters." I mean, is that who knows? Honestly, and the fact that he's not willing to weaponize like his newfound power and whatnot, like it just says a lot. Like, he's like, I know this rogue Supreme Court just gave me an insane amount of power and total immunity, but I assure you that I'm not ever going to use it because I disagree with their ruling. Like, yeah, that's so reassuring, because ultimately what it comes down to now is literally the American voter determining for every election now who is less likely to be a tyrant.
Right.
Like, period, point blank. What a horrible fucking day, dude. Like, this SCOTUS decision is literally now like the most important election issue by far and away. Like, nothing else really comes close. And yeah, never before in history has a president in America been handed this much power. Terrifying times.
Well, we're at about an hour and a half. I've got nothing else from my end. I mean, hope everybody enjoys this 4th of July, because I don't know what next year's 4th of July is going to look like.
No kidding. Yeah.
I mean, my God, if we're still alive and have a show and are still allowed to express criticism of the United States federal government a year from now, I don't know if that'll be allowed.
No kidding.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see, man. Hey, but
for real,
this is what you get after a generation spends their time thinking of themselves and not thinking of America, not thinking of the country at large. Just 40 years, man. This is the culmination of 44 years of selfishness. That's what this is.
Yeah.
And short-term thinking, ruling over long-term thinking. Okay, ready, everybody?
Yes.
Start talking to your friends and family about calling your local Democratic office representative. I don't care who it is. Get the message out there to replace Biden. Yes. Trump cannot win this election.
He cannot.
Because of this Supreme Court ruling, the danger is more pronounced now than ever. So Trump becoming president really is not an option if you're interested in preserving American democracy. The threat is that big. And I've got issues with every single person we talked about, except maybe Wes Moore, because I don't know him as well. But I'm sure I could find something I don't like about him. I could find something I don't like about anybody.
Sure, yeah. Like
all right.
It really is no exaggeration, no hyperbole. Like the end of just the America that we know it as, like as flawed as it may be, gets replaced with basically everything laid out in Project 2025. No administrative state, like Supreme Court reigns over all. Go read it. I can't overstate the dangers, and we'll cover it more as time goes on up until the election. But everybody stay safe and have a good 4th of July weekend regardless.
And remember, you don't get change in America by asking nicely, and if you don't vote this November, the kind of change you're going to get is borderline evil.
Unimaginable.
So take it seriously. Take your citizenship seriously, y'all. This is getting real. Bye-bye.
Very real.